Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's nice to see so many friends. Um, my little presentation is about best practices in how to engage your communities when we talk about animals and disasters. And we want to use a whole of society or whole of community approach to this concept since animals are not always included in our disasters or disaster plans. So I have my computer here just for my notes, but we'll just focus on the presentation and I will take questions if there are any. Let's see. Is it? Am I wrong? Does that work? Well, I hope everybody's had a nice coffee and nice breakfast this morning. So I'll just introduce myself to make this go. Um, Hi, I'm Jackson, and the only reason that I have any right to talk to you today about this is I have a background in emergency management. I'm a veterinarian, and I've been working in animals and disasters for about 20 years for various groups, including International Fund for Animal Welfare, ASPCA, currently with Paws, and supporting many other friends from other groups as well, who are our partners, including Blue Cross for many, many years. Oh, no worries. Thank you so much. Um, so this is just a more of a discussion. This is best practices from humanitarian practices. There's something called Sphere that we abide by. But the introduction to the presentation is we really want to talk about these topics and why it's important for us to take account of animals and disasters. We think that they're interesting, but it's not always recognized by people outside of our industry. We need to recognize that it needs a whole of society, a whole of a community approach. Ultimately, we want to reduce mortality and injuries. This presentation basically has four basic areas of discussion. And so we've gone through sort of the concept and the significance of what this is about. Um, and we'll go in through some detail now. So, concept and significance. Why is it important? The approach really is we want to see animals included in disasters. Um, 90, about 95% of current national disaster legislation does not include animals, or only includes some animals and not all animals, which makes it incredibly challenging because governments would say, we don't have an accountable government agency, we don't have a budget, and we don't have staff. We're not addressing this. It's not our priority. Why are animals important? They are our livelihoods, they are our companions, they are part of our world. And the more on the ground we are working with people with their pets, we know that animals are very important to their everyday. So we need to include, collaborate, share the responsibility, coordinate, and all those words and all those definitions. But in reality, we just need to make sure animals are a part of it. And if it isn't yet, speak with your local civil protection agency, authority, your veterinary authority, and make sure that it is an important part. But we can start from our communities first. Success models of when we include animals, and there are a few in the world, it means that we can reduce animal suffering, which is really what we're all here for. We can enhance community resilience, which means people aren't going back into a disaster area like a fire or a flood to rescue their dog that puts them at risk. So human safety. So that person goes in to get the dog. A rescuer might have to go after them, which is more time, there's money, there's more danger. It strengthens communities when you have a plan. It reduces the need for additional resources. So protects the things that we need to. So it's financing, public health. Did you know that if you touch the floodwaters are considered hazardous materials? It is toxic. It has things like things from cars, runoff, all these things potentially can cause you risk. We noticed that from Katrina when many my colleagues who were in the water with me, when we came out, we had a lot of other health issues to deal with many years on. And if we include animals in this, then we legally and ethically fulfill those requirements. Everybody's protected. So, okay. There is that wheel over there. That's the disaster management cycle. It starts with mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery. Preparedness is the first one, then response. But we always start with the response, which means we're never really prepared. So how do we prepare? We have to make plans. In this case, we're really talking about a few of our important stakeholders. Government, I had mentioned already. So this animal control, possibly, whatever that agency is. Public health. One Health is a massive part of this because we talk about rabies and other diseases and potentially diseases that come from water sources that are born from animals. Leptospirosis is one of them from rats that got into public drinking water, causes people to be ill. Veterinarians see it and know it immediately. Human doctors rarely ever see it and they can't even diagnose it properly. So people get very ill. Animal welfare groups, these are some of them. There might be others. And this is the community. Who else? Sometimes we need academia to help prove things. Make friends with them. Your media communications, speak with them, have contacts there. They can help advocate the right information to the community. Other NGOs, humanitarian groups, they deal with people during disasters, but people come with animals and they cannot take care of them. It's not in their mandate. Then we, as the animal welfare movement and protection agencies, we might be able to fulfill that role. Logistics. What we learned from COVID was things break down. No food. What do? No transport crates. How do you get these things moving when you can't? So transport companies, suppliers are very important for us. So those are our key stakeholders. How do we implement this massive, insane plan? Here are some of our challenges. People aren't aware. How many of you have your own personal disaster plan? Raise your hand. There's very few hands. Do you know where you live, what your plans might be? So our own resilience is part of this. Those are skill sets that, not that we don't know, it's simply we haven't practiced. Things happen, we deal with it when we can. So resource constraints, money, all these things. How do you do this? So it requires solutions like knowing what to do. Many of the groups that we work with will have websites and key resources to allow people to plan themselves. Shelters, animal shelters, need to plan for what do you do for the animals that are in your facility if it floods. Fine. But how about the community? They will come knocking on your door. They think your services are still available during times when they're not able to cope with disasters, but you might also have that. So knowing and communicating that effectively to your community is incredibly important. For those of us who work internationally, cultural sensitivity, legal frameworks, all of these things are incredibly important. If you didn't catch that, I apologize. So, but basically, a lot of it's affecting cities, lots of people, lots of animals. And it's great to integrate animal welfare into disaster efforts because it helps advocate for other animal welfare efforts that we also are driving. So how do we include the community? Well, we actively engage them. You can do it through whatever venues and accesses that you have. Some groups can do it online. Some groups have to do it in person. We've worked with communities that are illiterate. So only things like posters and comics were the best way to convey our message. By word of mouth, storytelling, other than the traditional ads, radio, television. There are many, many ways of getting that information out. Some of the things that many countries don't have is an early warning system. Do you know that a storm is coming? Do you know when it's arriving? Do you know how strong that storm is? Those are all questions that we can answer through our technology, but how do you convey that to the communities that we work with? So these are the things that we can do as an add-on bonus to the things that we're already doing. We already have a web page. It's putting information out during the right season. Collaborating, networking. If you have an actual plan, remember that we have to practice them, because I definitely forget them myself. Who do I call? Where do I go? What do I do? Don't forget, for a lot of the groups that we work with, at the end of the day, they have two choices. Do I stay or do I need to go? Do I evacuate? But by providing that involvement, they get to make a plan. They know what to do. And this is going to help your local government, because they have a plan. They will not be people who will not know what they will do for themselves and their animals. Take those learnings, share it with others. We want to engage and have regular meetings. So in our programs, we tend to talk to our communities in advance of the disaster, not during it. About 3 months in advance, we start the messaging to provide plans. Do you have a plan? What is the government plan? What is your personal plan? We share this in all the venues online. There's practices for children. These are great ways to advance these concepts. And we do it every year. So there's a spin every year, so it makes it more fun. Based on the same materials. This way, what we're doing is empowering the communities. We give them the power and the knowledge. We encourage them to take action. They are saving themselves. We build capacity, we do the trainings, we advocate the legislation to protect animals. Once these things are in place, governments are more likely to cooperate. And this is the most sustainable way. So your short-term investment into these communication formats allow the community to better understand the risks that are involved and better able to plan. And these plans are flexible. So today it might be a storm, but that same plan could be adapted, same concepts, for other kinds of hazards, or even as extreme as conflict. So what's the future outlook, and how do you collaborate? So we hope that with increasing awareness, having the right policy frames, there's going to be more technological advancements. We're seeing that every day. With those communities, we should be able to have better outcomes. Bring animal welfare groups and concepts into disaster management. That's the leading agency. It's not that they have to join us, we have to join them. So let's be flexible. Veterinary medical partnerships. So there is a difference between a veterinary authority and a veterinary association. Not everybody understands that. One is the businesses of the veterinarians, and one is the legal authority for the chief veterinary officer for the country. So between those two, you can get authorization from one, but you need to make friends with the businesses. Because when you provide veterinary services, sometimes you're taking away work from local vets when they need it the most, since they're in a disaster. Collaborate. Get those academics involved, get your data, prove that including animals is saving lives. Corporate engagement. Blue Cross of India has a great example when during COVID, since there was no traveling, they went and asked their wonderful hotel kitchens, canteens, the commissaries to make food for them so they can deliver more food to more animals by just being the middleman, by getting the food and giving it to the community volunteers so that they can take care of their own animals. That's fantastic. Share that information with your region and international groups. They're great learnings about collaboration. Not only in animal protection, but definitely to humanitarian aid groups. The M&E, so basically data. We're lacking a lot of information. Saving that dog, that cat, that cow is great. But we need to document where, how, and how are we doing this Are we doing this to professional standards? Are we being safe? Include all of the society that we can, which is an interesting thing because the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction just posted that the inequalities, even in a family, between genders and how disasters affect them. So inclusivity, making sure that everybody has a voice. These are all more indicators that if you can, to collect these. If you have more questions about these, I'm more than happy to go into the MME components of disasters. Thank you. So in summary, Asia region is the #1 region for disasters. Yay, we're #1. We should have the output of more people surviving, saving themselves and their animals, and being safe. Please recognize that as climate affects everything around the world, there are more disasters. It's increasing in frequency, magnitude, and duration. It's occurring outside of the normal seasons. We have a cyclone season. We have a typhoon season. It's now happening earlier or later. And outside of those times, it's affecting more. They're not going to be bigger. There are going to be many more of them, and more of them affecting each other. Well, that's what we're seeing around the world. This is the adaptation that we need to seek, and we hope to consider including things like traditional and indigenous knowledge of how we used to do things, adapt them for the modern day, see what we can do, and include everybody, because everybody also includes animals. So with that, thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great day at the conference. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Jenna Haggerty from the Donkey Sanctuary. One of the things that I've realised in my short time at the organisation and in the sector is the very important role, but often unseen role, of animals in disaster response. And as in, they're often the only animals that can, or the only almost vehicles that can get in and out of disaster-struck zones, so they play a really important role in kind of the response and a reaction. Do you see that kind of recognised by governments almost, well, any more than, say, the role of domestic, well, pets, I suppose? And can that be a way into telling the Animals Matter story?
So if I understand the question, the use of animals to carry things into disaster zones that are not being able to be accessed by mechanical vehicles. Yeah. Okay. So that is a great segue into animals can get to places that cars or vehicles cannot, but there's inherent risk with animals because we're putting them into work and into a dangerous situation. So various groups, I know that the Donkey Sanctuary works on this with many other equine protection organizations because we see them on the ground with us in protecting livelihoods. So if you're hiring local owners of equine species to help with the transport of animals, that's helping the local economy, that's fine. But give consideration to animals, particularly since they may be at risk if the people going into those areas do not know what the potential risks are in disasters. So in the safety component, I would say if it's floods, be careful they don't get near the water. We don't want any animals falling into the water, but there's just always risk. Yeah, thank you.
No, I just watched a follow-up to this. You see, in Himalayas, where all the pilgrimage centers of Hinduism are situated, most places are not accessible. So either you walk or you go by a mule or horse. As a result, the animals are in very poor shape because they're overused and there are landslides everywhere. So I don't think using them to work is a solution. In fact, after going last year, we wrote about it, and then the court has put a stay and gradually has reduced the numbers of horses and mules, because in a disaster, it's a landslide and everything goes. So I don't think it's such a good idea to use animals in a disaster-prone zone.
That is a great comment. So I will follow up with, we would always prefer to use things that can suffer. But we do utilize things in a need because of local practice or just true inaccessibility. So it just needs to be balanced out with the abuse or the overuse of animals, particularly during those times. As long as it's able to have some rotation, then it's okay. Because we vary with the partners we work with and the regions. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.